Hello, everyone. Before I begin, I would just like to share a little background to this interview. I currently work as a K through 12 library media / technology specialist. For this project, I'd hoped to connect with the fellow K through 12 educator who teaches online. The week I was scheduled to do this interview, I had found somebody who works at a school up in Duluth. However, I came down with a virus and a high fever, and I was unable to connect with my chosen person. However, I was able to meet with somebody and interview them who was informative about online training. His name is John Stevens, and he's a corporate employee who formerly worked for a company where he designed online training seminars for new hires. I was able to take what I learned from him and to think about it in a K through 12 setting. And I really was comparing how teaching students versus teaching adults is in an online environment and really kind of understanding those big differences. So John formerly worked for a company called CU Recovery, which is an agency that works for a credit union that helps resolve financial accounts. During his time there, he ran an online training course for newly hired employees. The goals for this training were to limit time for the company spent on training and also offer additional support for new hires so that they had access to materials in a convenient and flexible way. The purpose of the online instruction for new hires was so all the employees would be able to access those materials in order to be successful in their new job roles. So John created the development training courses with the partnership of another colleague. Together, they first researched learning management systems and they decided on the technology tools that they were going to use. Additionally, they went over topics that needed to be addressed to ensure proper training, as well as to get feedback from the new hires on how effective the online platform and instructional training was. What they ended up using was something called Canvas, which he says was really effective and simple and was great for utilizing their goals. The online training was a supplemental resource for the in-person training that the company offered. So using Canvas, John and his colleague were able to go over customer service techniques, collection laws, and account management solutions. The company operates with most employees needing to achieve a monthly goal for the amount of accounts they resolved. And the basic expectations were also laid out for all of the new employees to learn. And so I will just quickly pull up some information on Canvas. Now, this is an LMS system that is commonly used in higher education. It can be used K through 12, but now companies are really starting to use it. And so here is just a little bit of information on, who is using this learning management system, and what kind of targets can this LMS platform offer businesses. And so I just wanted to kind of include a little bit of information on options that are out there for people who are interested in, looking for a new LMS platform for online learning. So although John was not a trained teacher, through our discussion, I could see that, he had a lot of goals for his employees that I would have for my students. He wanted them to really grasp the training knowledge and to develop an understanding. And he wanted them to be able to remember that new knowledge and apply it to their positions, which reminded me of, instructional goals that I do that align with Bloom's taxonomy of learning, specifically using the cognitive domain, which as teachers, we aim for these things in our instructions. So as I spoke with him, I kind of broke down in this model here just kind of what we talked about and what he stresses, his considerations, things that he said were really important to consider when first implementing something online. So the first thing he did was find an LMS, a tool for learning, something that he knew would be beneficial for his employees and be able to help utilize and hit all of his goals. Then he thought about the content, what was going to be the course outline, what were the materials, what were the expectations for learning. And in this case, if they didn't pass their training portion, they were going to be let go as employees. So he said he also wanted to make sure that, if they had questions, if they needed to communicate, there was a way for them to do that using the LMS platform. And the students get active learning from online instruction. He just wanted them to be able to really connect to the content. There would be quizzes and things that they could help and kind of checkpoint their training as they went. And then finally, there was a summative assessment for learning. And if they didn't hit it, if they did not pass the assessments, then they would be let go from the company. So there's a larger stakes here for the adult learners when it came to this. So thinking about the motivational factor, motivation is a big part of learning. And I know with my students, it can vary. Sometimes it's an intrinsic motivation. Sometimes there's extrinsic factors. With adults, when I was talking to John, the motivation was different. It was very real world. It was very, dire consequences. If they didn't participate in the training. If they didn't pass, then, that was going to cost them a job. And so I was just kind of thinking about that, from a teacher standpoint. I want my students to succeed. I want them to learn. And so that's something that I'm passionate about as a teacher. And when I spoke with John, he has a corporate mind, and when if they pass or they don't, and it was very kind of matter of fact. And I did think about that as adult learners, the motivation is different, and learning becomes something that you do to better yourself, to better your life. There's reasons why, you stay motivated to do something. So I was just kind of interested by those differences. And I started to think about my K through 12 students, and how, their brains are still developing and they have different learning needs compared to adults. Thinking about specifically, I'm a middle school teacher. I know that they need some activities that are going to connect them with one another. I do believe social emotional learning is very important still. Being able to personalize in an online environment and to cultivate a positive, connected learning community is really imperative for them at this age. As a teacher, online classroom or traditional, that's something that I strive for. So currently I do teach an online book club for 7th graders. And this is something that I've had to do with them this year are nudges. I'll send them a reminder email. Okay, remember to log in and post. Answers need to be submitted by Friday. And they really need those little nudges from you in order to stay on track and to be responsible for learning. So for me, I was really just kind of thinking about comparing, with adult learners in the corporate setting. It was, here you go. These are the tools you need, now go. And for me as a teacher, I lay things out. I try to be as clear as I can with my expectations, but I do also, do those little nudges for some of my learners because I do know that they need it in order to succeed and to stay on task. So when I was looking to see, business online learning has grown and it's becoming very prevalent. I know that there's a lot more jobs now at home where people are able to conduct their work at home online. And so I was kind of curious about that, and how it's grown in the last few years. And the American corporation using online learning right now is about 77%. And so as you can see with these percentages up here, it's definitely something that is growing and being more normal for businesses to offer. If you want to work from home today, that's okay, or come into the office. There seems to be a lot more flexibility now with business and online learning. And I was able to get some more information on K through 12 data and, how is that growing? Which I know there is a lot of teachers now who are online teachers, and K through 12 education has become extremely popular online. And so this was an image that I saw that just kind of talked about, how many schools in the US have online options for students, and thinking about how many of those kids now are online students. Is really, I think, impressive how much it's grown. I did find this resource, iNecall, which is a place that has lots of information for online learning. It talks about policies and legislation and how that is all kind of tying in now with online learning. So this is a great resource just to kind of think about the standards in place, how much it's growing, how do we prepare as educators, and it has a lot of resources moving forward into a technology-driven world, and how that's going to probably change a lot of things in education. So I was able to kind of locate this resource and read through it and to see just how prevalent this really is becoming. So there's a lot of implications in online learning and teaching. Online learning is a trend that is truly growing, and there's many positive aspects to online learning. But I think in order for learning to truly be effective online, the instructor needs to really think about all the aspects and really, really carefully think about it. And I found this image, and I thought that kind of summarized what I was thinking. All of the things we need to consider. It's, not just our content, and it's not just, putting the information out there for learners, but it's, thinking about all of these things that kind of combine together to create a successful online course. And I will reflect now and think about my experience talking to John. I really was fortunate to gain some insight into what online learning courses would look like from a business or professional development angle. I can see how important it is to design the course so that it is truly effective for all learners, whether they are K through 12 or adult. I would definitely take his advice on how to plan an online course and make sure that I was thinking about the LMS system, what tech tools and instructional materials, but also thinking about the timeline. What are my goals and how accessible is it from a users, and what kind of assessment would I be, putting out there for my learners? The differences I take from our conversation is really about our professional roles in the view of our learners. So I would want to make sure that I was thinking more about my students and not just the content, not just the objectives, but I would want to make sure that I was really thinking about them and making sure that I was taking into consideration their cognitive abilities, social emotional learning, their communication. I really do love building lessons around constructivism and, creating meaning from your own learning. I like to personalize things, and I want students to be hands-on. So I would make sure that even if I was teaching in an online environment, my learners were not being passive. They would have those expectations laid out, and I hope would communicate well with me as well as their peers. And then my interview questions are on the last couple of slides here. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.